Hey guys, in this video we are going to learn how to make an AWS Lambda function run on a recurring schedule. It is just like the cron jobs that we set up in a Unix or Unix-like system. Only difference is that our cron job will be running on cloud, AWS cloud to be specific. So we will set up our Lambda function in such a way that it is invoked on repeated intervals by some kind of scheduler. Now, as we know that Lambda is serverless, hence it is very efficient for running jobs on a repeated interval as compared to setting up a cloud host like EC2 and running an infinite loop for doing the same. Setting up Lambda for running repeated tasks will save you money and requires minimal setup. So without any delay, let's get started. Okay, so for this video, I'm going to assume that you already know what is AWS Lambda and how do Lambda functions work. But if you still have any doubts, then you can check out my video Introduction to AWS Lambda, which is a part of my video series called Serverless REST API using AWS and Python. So you can check that out first. And now coming to the main question, which is how to run cron jobs or something like cron jobs on AWS Lambda. So obviously the first thing that we need is a Lambda function. And then what we need is a scheduler. We need a program which depending upon your provided schedule is responsible for triggering your Lambda function, right? So for that, we are going to use another AWS service, which is called CloudWatch. So CloudWatch is basically used for monitoring other AWS resources. And here, the specific thing that we'll be using is CloudWatch events. So CloudWatch provides a lot of things. CloudWatch logs is something which you might already be familiar with. We use CloudWatch logs for checking out the logs of our Lambda functions, right? So similarly, we have something called CloudWatch events as well, where we can create something called an event rule. So in an event rule, what you have to specify is the event source from which you will be listening to the events. And the other thing that you need to specify is the target where those events will be sent for processing. So what is going to happen here is that in order to make a cron job for a Lambda function, what will happen is that in the event rule, I'll be specifying the event type as schedule, and I'll be providing my cron schedule there. And in the target, I'll be specifying my Lambda function, which needs to be triggered according to that schedule. So that is what the plan is in order to make our cron job on AWS Lambda. So the first thing that I'll be doing is that I'll be giving you a quick demo of doing this thing using the AWS Management Console only. So we'll be using the AWS Management Console, which is the UI part for running an AWS Lambda function according to a schedule. And once we're comfortable with the idea, then we'll be doing it programmatically so that we understand the nitty-gritties of it. So for that, we'll be using AWS SAM, the serverless application model, which makes it easier to write programs which can run on AWS. So that is what we're going to do. Okay, so here is my AWS Management Console, and first thing that I'm going to do is to create a Lambda function. So I'm just going to create a hello world Lambda function here. So I'm just going to click on create function, and I'm going to use a blueprint, which is the Lambda functions which have already been created for us in form of some templates. So we're just going to pick one of them. So let me just look out for some. So here is the hello world example, and it is using Node.js. So let me find some Python example. So runtime Python. So let's check it out. So here we have hello world Python. So that is what I'm going to go with, and configure. And now giving my Lambda function some name. So let me just call it hello world because it is a simple hello world Lambda function, and just click on create function. So now as our Lambda function is getting ready, in the meantime, let me start to show you how CloudWatch looks like. So this is the CloudWatch console, and here we have the events, and in the events we have rules. So let me just click on rules, and now I'm going to click on create rule. And here what I will be using is So I have two options in order to create an event rule. One is called an event pattern and second is a schedule. So in event pattern, I'll be specifying a pattern. So if any incoming event matches that pattern, then that event will be passed to the target for further processing. So that is one way of creating event rules. And another way is schedule, where you specify a particular schedule, and according to that schedule, events will be fired to the target. So that is what will be happening. So in order to create a cron job, obviously we need a schedule. And our Lambda function is also ready meanwhile. So in order to just check if everything is working fine, I'm gonna create a simple test event and just run my Lambda function to test if everything is working fine. So yeah, everything seems to be working fine. So now here I'm going to create my event source. So now in order to create an event source schedule, you have two options. One is rate and another one is called cron expression. So if you don't know about cron expressions, then you can check out my video on cron jobs. And that is provided in the description of this video below. So that is another video where I explained a lot of things about cron and the cron patterns, so you can check that out. And other than that, there is fixed rate, where you can just specify, for example, let's say 1 minute. So it means that an event will be fired every 1 minute to your target. So that is also kind of a cron job. So if you have a simple schedule where you have to just run your application according to a fixed rate of hours, minutes or days, then you can just go with this option. And if it is something complex, then you can use the cron expressions. It is as simple as that. And now in the add target, the target is going to be a Lambda function. And now I'm just going to select the hello world Lambda function, which I just created. And I can also configure the input. So for the input, I can have the JSON text. So I'm just going to copy the same input that I already have. So let me just click on configure test events and let me just copy this. So this is my input and looks fine. So I'm just gonna click on configure details. And now I just need to give a name to my event rule. So I'm just gonna call it hello world rule, and that's it. I'm just gonna click on create rule. The state of my event rule is enabled, as you can see. So now look at that. This is my hello world rule, and if I click on it, I can check out my schedule, which is fixed rate of 1 minute, and this is for a Lambda function, which is hello world, and the input is constant. So now my Lambda function must be triggering every 1 minute, and I can check that out by going to the monitoring section of my Lambda function and checking out the logs in the CloudWatch. So as you can see, we are using CloudWatch for multiple things. We are using it for logs, and also we are using it for events. So now in the log group for my Lambda function, I will see my log group. Yeah, as you can see. So I'm just going to click on the log group and look at that. My Lambda function has been run 2 times so far, and let me just reload it. And in 1 minute more, it will run 3 times and then 4 times and so on, right? So yeah, so let us just wait for one more event, and then we'll be sure that our CloudWatch event rule is working fine, right? So just waiting for it, and once that is confirmed, then what we'll be doing is that we'll be writing some Python code for doing the same thing, and through AWS SAM. And if you do not know about AWS SAM, then you should check out my video on project setup using AWS SAM. So basically, SAM is serverless application model, which makes it very easy to create your projects which are going to be run on serverless resources like Lambda. So that's why it is quite cool. So now I think 1 minute has obviously passed. So look at that, we got a third invocation as well. So it is 1 2 3, so 3 times my function has been called. So in this way, this CloudWatch event rule is working, and it seems to be working fine. So I'm happy with it. So now we are going to go with the programmatic method. Okay, so the use case here is that I want to periodically store the trending Twitter topics. The Twitter API can only give you current trends, but let's say you have some project where you want to keep information about Twitter trends in a given time range. So for that, you need to store the trends data periodically, and that's exactly what we are going to do here. We will create a Lambda function to read Twitter trends and then dump that data in an S3 bucket for later use. So I'm using the Python-Twitter library for fetching the Twitter trends, and this is this Python script that I have already written for you that we're going to use for getting the trends. So the trends API actually is of two types, which is to get the trends from around the world or to get it geographically according to a particular geographical location. And for that we have to provide WOEID, which is where on the earth ID, I think. So yeah, so this is a very simple script that we already have. So this is basically our Lambda function, and we want to run it again and again, and then whatever data that we are receiving from it, we want to save it in an S3 bucket. That's it. So this is as simple as it can get, and now we are gonna write some code for it. So let me start by opening PyCharm, and here I'm gonna start by creating a new project. So my new project is a pure Python project, and the name of my project will be Twitter trends, right? Or let me just give it a name which is more suitable for this particular tutorial. So let me call it Lambda scheduler example. So this is the name of my overall project, and inside that I'll be creating a SAM application that I will call as Twitter trends or something like that. Okay, so it's fine. I'm having a virtual environment and looks good. So I'm just going to click on create and open it here. Okay, so now whatever I'll be doing from here on, if you have no idea about AWS SAM, then you should check out my video, which is project setup using AWS SAM, so that you get a fair idea of what all is actually happening here. So now my virtual environment is being created, and in a few moments my project will be set up here. Okay, so my project is set up, and now the next thing that I'm going to do here is open my terminal. And so as you can see that currently I only have a virtual environment here. So now the first thing that I'm going to do is, in my virtual environment, I'm going to install AWS SAM CLI, and using that CLI I'll be creating a very simple SAM application, a sample SAM application, which is a simple hello world application. So just waiting for SAM CLI to get installed, and after that we're gonna do that. Okay, so AWS SAM CLI is installed, and now I'll be doing SAM init in order to initialize my SAM setup. So I'm just going to use a quick start template with Python 3.7, and project name will be Twitter trends. And now it is cloning the app templates, and then it will ask me which SAM template would I like to use. So I'm just going to go with the hello world example because it is pretty easy to understand, and we'll just be editing it a bit. So now I think my project is ready. So let me just check the code. So here is the hello world, and in the app.py, as you can see, this is a very simple example. Here we are taking an event, and in the response we are just providing a JSON object which is looking like this. So I think all this doesn't matter to us, so I'm just gonna remove all this, and I'm just gonna call it def Twitter trends collector, and just like every Lambda function, it will be taking event and context as input, and then it will be doing something to it, right? So for that I'm just gonna add a new Python file here. So let me just call it trending, and then let me just copy the code that I already have, the Python script, which is going to fetch me anything that I need, the Twitter trend that I need. So this is the code, and in order to run it I actually need something which is the Python-Twitter library. So as it is getting installed, let me just, so I do not need request here. So in my requirements.txt, I'm just gonna put Python-Twitter as one of my requirements. and this is done. So that is now, so it is now, as it is getting installed, let me just do all the remaining things that we need to do here. So we have this, and just let me set hello worlds as the hello world folder as my source root. So in PyCharm you might need to do that if you are setting up a SAM application. So you can do that simply by doing a right click here and making mark directory as sources root. So now that is done, and now in my app.py I can simply import the get trends function. So from trending, import get trends. So that is the first thing that I need to do here. And now the event that I'll be receiving, that should be a JSON which will contain the WEID, which is the input for this function. So I'll be expecting that, and if that is not provided, then what happens is that it provides you the trends, Twitter trends from around the world. So event can contain or it might not contain WEID field. So trends is equal to, so first of all let me just print the event so that we can see what event are we getting as input in the logs, and then I'm just gonna do trends is equal to get trends event dot get WOEID. So this is what we need to do here, and once that is done, the another thing that we need to do is that we need to dump it into some S3 bucket, right? So for that I'll be using Boto3. So import Boto3 and creating a S3 resource from Boto3, Boto3.resource S3, and then creating a bucket resource from S3.bucket, in which I'll be passing the name of my bucket. So I'll be creating an S3 bucket which I'll call as Twitter trends bucket. So this will be the name of my bucket, and that will be enough to specify a bucket. And then I can do bucket dot put item, I think. So let me just verify that through the docs. So I provide the link for that, the Boto3 S3 resource. So here, let it just load. So here we have, okay, so it's put object. So the bucket class has put object method, so that is what we need. So put object, and there you need to specify two things which are required, which is the, so here is the signature, the request syntax. So body is which needs to be put, and then you also need to specify the key, the name of the file that you want to save it with. So just putting that key is equal to, going to be something, and there is going to be the body which is equal to json.dumps. So I'll be just be dumping, so I need to provide a string as the input here. So json.dumps trends. So the trends data is simply a list of dictionaries, so I can just convert it to a JSON string by using json.dumps. And let me just keep indent equal to 2 to make it look a bit pretty. So just importing JSON. Okay, so this looks fine. And now in order to provide the key, so what should be the name of my key here for this particular object? So what will be happening here is that now need to understand that this is going to be a cron job, right? So for every trends JSON file that I'll be saving every time my Lambda is getting triggered, I need to save it with some identifier. So I'll be using the current timestamp as the identifier, and also I'll be putting it in some folder like structure for any WEID that I get, right? So let me just create a simple utility function which is called create key, which will read the event data and then it will return the key. So how my key will look like is that, let me use a formatted string. So how my key will look like is that, first of all it will be the folder, and then it will be the name of the file .json. So the folder name will be event dot get WOEID. So let me just use single quotes here, WOEID, and if no WEID is provided, then it should be the world folder. and then in the actual name of the file I'm going to use the current timestamp, which is time.time function, which provides you the current timestamp. So let me just import this name like this, and yeah, so in this way I have generated I've created a function to generate the key for a given event to be saved in Dynamo in S3. So it looks cool. And then finally what I'm going to return, I'm going to just return successful maybe. Okay, so it looks fine. And or just let me make it something good, result success, that's it. Okay, so this is my Lambda function and it looks pretty fine. And now let us try to take a look at our SAM template, which will be provided to CloudFormation in order to generate the required AWS resources. So first of all, let me remove all the clutter which is here. So one thing here about this particular hello world example is that it is for a particular Lambda function which is triggered by API gateway. So as you can see, the type of event is API. So that is going to be replaced by schedule. So I'm just going to remove all the things which are not required here. And also the handler will be app dot. So the name of my handler is now Twitter Trends Collector. So just renaming my handler in my CloudFormation template as well. So events. So now in order to understand this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check out the AWS serverless function template documentation provided by AWS SAM. So here, so this is the AWS SAM template that you can write for defining a particular Lambda function that you want to be generated via CloudFormation. So in the event section, you have to provide event source, which can be a lot of things, and out of that we need schedule. And now here we can see what all needs to be provided in a schedule, right? You need to provide description, enabled, input, name, schedule. So most of the things here are optional. I think the only thing which is important here is the schedule. So let me just write the code for it. So I'm just going to call it CloudWatch schedule, or let me make it India Trends schedule. So actually I'll be creating two schedules here, one for India and one for world, so that we can see that how two events are supported side by side. So one is called India Trends schedule, in which first of all I have to provide the type. So the type will be schedule. Let me just verify that once again. So here you have to provide type and then the properties, right? So type will be schedule and properties are gonna be, so now I have to provide schedule. So in the schedule I can, now let us take a look at the format for providing the schedule. So we usually have an example in the end. So yeah, I can have this particular type of schedule, which is a rate type. I can also provide a cron expression, but for now let's just go with the rate type way of specifying the schedule. Now rate is 1 minute, so that might be a bit more fast because Twitter trends typically change, let's say after 1 hour or half an hour. So but for now, just to take a look at how our Lambda function is working, we are just going to put the rate as 1 minute, which looks fine. And other than that, all the other things that I can provide are the name. So if you do not provide name, then I think it will just take this name which you provide in the CloudFormation template like this, so that is fine. Description is not required, enabled is by default true. So schedule is the only thing that you need to specify, but I can also provide the input, which is a valid JSON text which is passed to the target. So yeah, that is what we need to specify. So in case of India Trends schedule, I actually need to provide the input as, so in order to provide multi-line input, you just put this kind of symbol, and after that you can specify your JSON document. So WEID, so where on the earth ID. So let me just check WEID of India. It seems to be this. So let me just copy it and paste it here. So this will be my input to my Lambda function in the case when I want to get the Twitter trends for India. And now let me just copy all this once again and make another schedule for world. So this will be world trends scheduler, and in this case no input is required, so it looks fine because we do not need that field WEID there. So in that case it will provide you, it will save the trends for the world. So yeah, so now it looks fine, the code looks fine, we have specified the events and all. And now one more thing which is remaining here is providing my Lambda function access to S3, right? And even before that I need to create my S3 bucket too, so I forgot that. So let me just write some CloudFormation code for specifying my bucket. So Twitter trends bucket is what we need to specify here. So for that you need to do type AWS S3 bucket, and in the properties the bucket name that I need is this. So if you do not know what all I am writing here, then you can just check out the CloudFormation for AWS S3 bucket, the CloudFormation template for it, and from there you can learn how to write the CloudFormation template for creating an AWS S3 bucket through CloudFormation. So that you can check, and it looks fine. So now the thing is that this bucket is there, but I need to give Lambda, my Lambda function, permissions to run that bucket. So for that, again, going back to the AWS serverless function template, there we can see that we can specify something called policies, and these policies will be added to the default Lambda role that is created using SAM for you. So I can provide any kind of AWS managed policy here. So let us take a look at what all AWS managed policy do we have available for S3. So for that I'm just going to go to IAM, which is Identity and Access Management, and I'm just going to go to policies, and I'm going to search for some policies. So let me just search for S3. So you can look at that, there is Amazon S3 full access. So this is a managed policy, which means that the definition or what all permissions are given is already specified in this particular policy, and I can just specify the name of this policy under the policies section. So what will happen is that it will be added to my Lambda functions role according to which it runs. Okay, so now I feel that my CloudFormation template is complete and it looks good. So I think I can just use SAM to deploy it and test if everything is working fine or not. So for that, if you have already followed my video on SAM, you know that what you need to do. You just need to do SAM build, and once your code is built, then you just need to deploy it. So now we are going to wait for SAM build. Okay, so it is saying that no template file found, because right now we are at the root of our project. I need to move to the Twitter trends folder. So here you can see that we have template.yaml. So yeah, now I can do SAM build. So look at that, it is building the function, hello world function, and doing every required thing which is there. So one thing that I can change in my code is that I can write hello world as Twitter trends function. One thing is this, and other thing is that I can rename this hello world as Twitter_trends. So let me just refactor everything. Rename Twitter trends, refactor. And now here also in the code URI I have to write Twitter trends. Okay, so now everything looks fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the SAM build again. So what SAM build does is that it creates the .aws SAM function, the .aws SAM folder, where it creates a build folder where all the code artifacts which need to be deployed to your AWS Lambda function are saved. So this looks fine, and so as you can see, we have the build folder here. We have all the required code artifacts, like all the third-party libraries which are required and so on are provided. So now I need to do SAM deploy --guided, because this is my first deployment. So I need some help from the SAM CLI in order to specify a few things. For example, what is the name of my stack is going to be. So I'm just going to call it Twitter trends, and the region I'm gonna set it as Mumbai, which is AP South 1, and allow SAM CLI IAM role creation. Yes, of course. Save arguments to some file called samconfig.2ml. That's fine. So these are the options that we're going with, and now the deployment should start in a few moments. So for that, let me just open the CloudFormation. So let us take a look at what all events are happening. So this looks fine. So the resources are getting created one by one, and I'm just waiting for my Lambda function to be available so that I can have a look at it. So yeah, my Lambda function got created again. So let me just test it. And for testing the input, so let me just copy the input this time. Okay, so I'm gonna create a new test event for invoking my Lambda function, and that is going to be this. And I'm just gonna click on create. So I have an event with which I can invoke my Lambda function. Let me just click on test, and yeah, so it got passed, which means that it is working fine. So now let me just open S3 in order to see if my S3 bucket was created and the data was saved or not. So obviously it must have got saved because we are getting the result as success, but let us just see if that actually happened or not. And meanwhile, let me also open the monitoring and open the logs for my Lambda function in CloudWatch to see if it is running that Twitter trends Lambda function again and again or not. So in the log groups, we're going to see that. Okay, and meanwhile, there seems to be, yeah. So here we have the Twitter trends bucket, and in the Twitter trends bucket, look at that, a folder got created, which is the WEID of India. And here we have two files. So as you must have noticed that I invoked my Lambda function only once, which means that the other file must have been created by the event rule. And yeah, as you can see that two events are there. So this looks cool. And also, since we had created two event rules, so it means that we should be having one more folder called world. So let me just reload it. So yeah, we have world as well, and we have got one file for it as well. So let me just open it to see if it looks fine and it has all the correct data or not. So I'm just opening the JSON file. So I think, yeah, we have done what was required in this particular video, which was to run a Lambda function in such a way that it is scheduled. It runs on a given schedule. And yeah, I think the data is correct. We have the hashtag trend format here and the timestamp as well on which that data was taken. So yeah, it looks cool, and we have been able to do what we were required to do. And I hope you enjoyed the process of doing all this and you learned a few more things than you knew before. So yeah, if you still have any doubts, you can put them in the comment section below. And that's it from this video. Thanks for watching.